Ian Dury's in-your-face attitude, his unabashed, Cockney-accented vocals, and an eclectic combination of punk, jazz, music hall and disco influences help carve a niche for himself and the Blockheads in the late 1970s. The seemingly unorthodox Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick dethroned the Village People in early 1979 for the #1 UK chart position. Today we're talking about Ian Dury and the Blockheads and the writing, recording and production of their most famous single.
Hit me with your rhythm stick. Hit me, hit me. Je t'adore, ich liebe dich. Hit me, hit me.
Hello there, it's Warren Hewitt here. I hope you're doing marvellously well. Welcome back to another episode of Songs That Change Music. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we have a new video. Of course, if you're into record production, recording, mixing, you name it, you can go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. Ian Dury and the Blockheads formed in 1977 to work on the singular frontman's first album, New Boots and Panties. The group were mavericks of the burgeoning post-punk and new wave era, drawing on a diverse range of influences that included jazz, rock, funk, reggae and music hall. Dury began writing songs with pianist and guitarist Chaz Jankel, and the pair started recording with drummer Charlie Charles, bassist Norman Watroy, guitarist John Turnbull, keyboardist Mick Gallagher and saxophonist Davey Payne. The group finished the album, but no major labels were interested in promoting it. However, the diverse collection of songs found a home at a newly formed independent label. In August 1977, Stiff Records released the first single, Sex and Drugs and Rock and Roll, which was banned by the BBC and applauded by the NME. Dury's debut album followed in September, minus the controversial single from the track list. It was still secretly included as track 1 on side 2 of the original pressing. And I loved it.
Sex and drugs and rock and roll is all my brain and body need. Sex and drugs and rock and roll. It's very good indeed. Keep your silly ways or throw them out the window.
Stiff invited the band on tour to promote the record alongside Elvis Costello and Nick Lowe, at which point they adopted the collective title Ian Dury and the Blockheads. Under the guidance of Pink Floyd's original management, the group quickly became one of the top live new wave acts of the late 70s. They scored their first top 10 single on the UK charts with What a Waste in April 1978, peaking at number 9. In November that same year, Ian Dury and the Blockheads produced their most acclaimed single, Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick. The basis of the song was composed during a jam session between the two at a rented mansion in Kent, becoming what Jankel would describe as punk jazz. The music was inspired by a funky piano section near the end of the first song on New Boots, Wake Up and Make Love With Me.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
There are also strong elements of disco throughout the track's overall groove, making Rhythm Stick one of the most atypical best-selling UK singles of all time. When Dury and Jankel brought the piece to the rest of the Blockheads, they each added their own individual touch. Most notable, Davey Payne contributed a honky saxophone solo played on 2 horns at the same time. And Norman Watroy wrote a complex 16 notes to the bar bassline. Producer Laurie Latham recalls, I think Norman had just been to see Jaco Pastorius at Hammersmith Odeon, and that's where he got the idea to play like that.
One of the things I loved about the Blockheads is that they had an eclectic sound that was definitely not typical of the era that they were in, of ska and punk. even though they ended up sounding like they were from that era, they had this unique blend of influences, and this was none more apparent than in the bass line, which to me has influences of jazz and jazz fusion. I'll play the part, which is not an easy part. I'll identify where I think a couple of the key influences came from. Blockheads' bassist was Norman Watt Roy, and I'm convinced that his influences on this song especially were Jaco Pastorius and Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power, of course, as well as a little bit of disco thrown in. The main influences, well, first of all, if we look at what is hip from Tower of Power, Rocco Prestia, the rhythm is pretty much the same, even though the notes are different. Got that persistent 16th note thing, and then some pushers in there. It's the same kind of thing, and that goes through a lot of Tower of Power stuff. But the main influence has to be Jaco Pastorius, and there's one part in Rhythm Stick where that, to me, is blaringly obvious. It's in the verses, and it's a sweet little part. You got... And then this part is the giveaway. He could have quite easily have gone... or something else, you know, some variation of that, and it will fit perfectly, but instead he throws in this funky, cool little parts. Nobody had heard anything like that in pop music, especially with the scene that was going on at that time, so it was real. I remember hearing it at that time, it's like, whoa, and then I put the pieces together. There's a release, it was Jaco Pastorius' solo release, 1976, there's a track called Come On, Come Over. And the bass line, there's one part of it, and it goes, and forgive me if I don't do this justice. Same thing. I'm playing it completely wrong, but you go and check it out, and it's right there, that one little bass line. And that very similarly happens again on 1977's Weather Report, Heavy Weather. Rhythm Stick was released in 78. All the bassists were listening to Jaco Pastorius at that point, so Norman clearly was. It's Teen Town from that. That's the first part. Goes off into Jaco land after that. But that one line is a dead giveaway where Norman got his inspiration. And it came together in this magical blend, and kudos to Ian Dury and the band for pulling that all together in such a unique way, such an eclectic sound that has really stood the test of time, and great songwriting, of course. So well done, Norman, and well done, the Blockheads. Ian Dury, God bless you.
Dury, who loved being in the studio and perfecting his takes, also overdubbed his vocals. None of the scratch takes from the live recording made the final cut. He spent countless hours getting his lyrics to fit into the rhythm, pausing on a word here or drawing one out there.
Sometimes I can get really involved with just writing words. I mean, it just goes, to be specific, you're terrific.
To be precise, you're awfully nice. To be quite clear, I love you, dear. And that's a fact. To be exact. Vera Gardner was a calendar queen from her early teens till she was 28. She had a silicone chip on each shoulder and her pulses kept a normal rate. Vera Gardner, calendar queen. She was free of sin and free of fools and studied French and German at the evening school. So then as her body posed for its unknown dreams, she did the business for them quiet screams in her thick mascara and her facial creams and her fishnet stockings with the crinkly seams. That's a year's work there. And if I'm lucky, maybe 6 or 7 songs will come out of it.
It was all part of Dury's process. As someone critical of his own vocal ability, his power was how he delivered his words and the unique timbre of his voice. Hit Me actually came together relatively quickly compared to some of his other recordings.
I can't sing very well. I'm learning. I'm breathing better. I'm quite interested in actually being able to impress myself. I don't impress myself as a singer. I'm not worried about it because I'm quite a good actor and I can get through by letting the feeling of the words that I write come out, and it's me that wrote them, so I can relate to it in that way. But
I think it's terrific, but it's not a singing voice. It's not a voice. Really. It's a sprouting voice.
Well, can you sing a scale with that? I mean, can you...
I can say one.
You say one?
Do, re... Oh, no, I can't even say one.
There's some debate over the origins of Dury's lyrics for Rhythm Stick. He himself mentioned a number of different accounts over the years. One claim is that he wrote them 3 years prior to the recording. Blockheads guitarist John Turnbull remembers Dury writing them on a US tour 6 months before entering the studio and still adjusting the words during the session. Music journalist Will Birch and author of Ian Dury, The Definitive Biography, discovered a typed manuscript with lyrics nearly identical to Rhythm Stick dated in 1976. Regardless, the song is a fine example of Dury's signature combination of lyrical poetry, wordplay and humour. The title is generally acknowledged as a reference to Dury's disability and walking stick, having suffered from polio as a child. The rest of the lyrics are a celebration of physical activity across the world, complete with smatterings of French and German and, according to Dury, a subtext of non-violence. Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick was recorded at the Workhouse Studio in London. The facility was arranged so that the control room sat above and looked down over the live room below. Producer Laurie Latham remembers, "Workhouse had the best API board I've ever worked on. It was brilliant. A really big desk with great EQ. The studio didn't have much gear, a Studio 24-track machine, great big JBL 43-41 monitors, a Pi compressor, and some audio and design bits and pieces, but not a lot else. The control room looked down on the live area with a lift at one end to take the equipment down into the studio. Well, of course, that was a nightmare for poor old Ian, because he had to get up and down the stairs." The song was recorded live with the Blockheads placed in different positions around the room. Dury sat on a stool in the middle of the group, laying down guide vocals into a handheld microphone. At least 11 versions of the song were recorded before one of the earlier takes was chosen. The biggest challenge for Latham was getting nice, close sounds of each instrument in the live room, which had high ceilings covered in metal tile. The studio wasn't really laid out. There weren't any booths in which I could put a Leslie or the piano, so the whole thing was chaotic. There was spill kicking around everywhere, but I had to just get on with it, because by that time the whole notion of trying to be a producer had gone. It was a case of just trying to get it down onto tape. With live recordings, what you're looking for is an elusive vibe. It's not necessarily a technical, perfect performance, but it has to have something magical about it, and Ian understood it. As it happens, there weren't any edits on the actual Hit Me multitrack. The overdubs consisted of an extra snare drum on top of the original to fatten things up, John Turnbull's guitar synth layers and lead lines throughout, and Davey Payne's saxophone solo. Latham recalls it probably only took Davey one take to record the solo, playing 2 saxophones at the same time into a Neumann U87. Even though the song would become a massive success for Ian Dury and the Blockheads, Much of the band, including producer Laurie Latham, were unimpressed by the final mix. Much of the problem, it seemed, stemmed from recording live. I was never happy with the mix. My authority had diminished since the recording of New Boots and Panties, and it was a complete free-for-all, with the whole band in there while Chaz basically took over and pushed faders around. I myself wasn't entirely happy because I didn't think we could hear enough bass. But then, I am never happy with mixes. The piano sound was another thing I was unhappy with. Because we did it live, I didn't have enough compressors. God knows why we didn't hire more equipment. Still, for myself and many others, the sound was magical for millions of listeners in the UK and around the world.
On the road to Mandalay, from Bombay to Santa Fe, o'er the hills and far away. Hit me with your rhythm stick. Hit me, c'est si bon, c'est nicht. Hit me, hit me, hit me.
Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick was popular on the radio right from its release. It was initially held from the #1 position on the UK singles chart by the Village People's YMCA, before overtaking it on January the 27th, 1979. It was Ian Dury and the Blockheads' first and only #1 single. UK sales rapidly approached the 1 million, stalling at 979,000 units in February 1979. It wasn't until digital downloads were made eligible towards the record sales that in 2004 Hit Me surpassed the 1 million unit mark. Today, the track is the 114th best-selling British single of all time. Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick is an idiosyncratically British chart topper that established a lasting legacy for an otherwise eclectic group of musicians. Ian Dury was a larger-than-life figure, an unparalleled talent. The son of working-class parents, Dury faced many hardships as a child, most notably contracting polio at just 7 years old, an illness which left him with diminished faculty on one side of his body.
Being physically handicapped, has it made it difficult for you to succeed in the music business? I mean, were there some barriers?
No, never, no. I think probably, well, somebody who's a small amount of talent as I got, it's probably helped me actually, really.
Undeterred, Dury pursued a life in the arts at age 16, when he left Chailey Heritage Craft School to study painting at Walthamstow College of Art.
It was good. I'm really glad I went there. It sounds very heavy, but in fact it was really good. If you fell over, the law was nobody was allowed to pick you up. You had to get yourself up. So you get the occasional like turtle who'd be there maybe an hour. Nobody was allowed to pick him up. Things like that were very good. It was a very equalised place. Disablement cuts across barriers of class and creed quite effectively, but I should think 80% of the children at Chailey were what you would call working class. I think my dad was working class. He left school at 13 and was a bus driver. I knew that the place where somebody like me ought to be is like an art school where people don't mind about what or who you are so much as what you do with it. I knew that it would be okay at art school because I'd read a book about Van Gogh. And I went and I was sweet. It was all right. Straight away, it was cool.
In 1964, he attended the Royal College of Art in London and began teaching at various art schools just a few years later. By the early 70s, he was painting commercial illustrations for the Sunday Times. He also started his first pub rock band, Kilburns and the High Roads. The group released one record before disbanding in 1975, but had an undeniable influence on punk and new wave, a torch Dury would continue to carry with the Blockheads.
How old was you when you first started singing?
30. Quite an old chap, really, for being all that, you know. But I thought, well, what's there to lose, you know? If you're 22, they call you old in the rock and roll business. So I just thought, who cares?
1977's New Boots and Panties is reputed as Ian Dury's finest work and was a massive record in the UK. It was among the top 30 best-selling albums in 1978 and 1979, eventually peaking at number 5 on the UK charts 17 months after its release. The popularity of Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick, written after New Boots and Panties came out, encouraged the album's retroactive success. Ian Dury passed away from cancer in the year 2000 at just 57 years old. In 2001, a tribute to the late artist honouring his legacy as one of the UK's most prominent new wave talents was released. Brand new Boots and Panties. The tribute featured covers by Paul McCartney, Sinead O'Connor, Robbie Williams and Madness, as well as performances by guitarist Steve Howe and pianist Jools Holland. The cover art was handled by Dury's longtime friend Peter Blake. Yes, Peter Blake, co-creator of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's sleeve. In life, his effortless flair and individualism took him to musical heights most could only hope for. Ian Dury seemingly beat all odds, becoming one of the biggest UK stars of the late 70s. I have to say, I am a huge fan. When that single came out, it was so amazing. It had punk rock attitude, but musicianship like you never heard. It was so good. And it was a smash hit in England, like we were talking about. It knocked off YMCA from the #1 spot. And it wasn't until subsequently we found anything out about his past. Nobody knew that he had polio. This is the power of music. You do something truly amazing, something truly incredible, breaks down all barriers and all stereotypes. Ian, my hat's off to you. So thank you everybody for watching. This has been a really great one. I really appreciate everybody checking out this video. Please check out the other videos in the series. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, goodbye.
In the deserts of Sudan and the gardens